All right, we're back. We are COMP305, Game Programming 1 in the fall 2019 semester at Centennial, and we're lesson 9, part 2, which is Intro to Scriptable Objects, continued. So last we left off, we had our scriptable objects. We still don't have any changes here to MailPilot, right? We were able to do the score and everything else. However, we've created 3 new scriptable objects based on the scene settings. Scriptable object we made. So there's our scene settings. So we made 3 new instances or assets, we can say, right? This is our scene settings. However, is there a way we can differentiate between one scene and another? Sure, we made them, but we really don't have a way of finding out what they are. Now we know there's one thing. This is not mono behavior, so there's no name asset. There's no name property. So one thing my thoughts are, we should create a new script to configure our scene enum. Let's talk about this. I'm going to make a new script. Let's do this together. I'm going to call this scene, capital S. Just like before, I'm going to go into our scene and change this from mono behavior. It's not going to be a scriptable object, but it is going to be an enum. I'm also going to make it system serializable again, so that way it's available to us in other parts of our code. We're not going to need start and update, and because it's an enum, we need 3 scenes in here: the start scene, the main scene, and the end scene. Are you with me? So now we have this scene enum. Remember that the scene enum is just a friendly name for numbers 0, 1, and 2. I want to add this to our scriptable objects, so that way each of the objects knows which scene it's going to be applying to. This is going to be part of our scene switcheroo that we're going to be doing. Okay? So how does this work? Well, I'm going to go back to my scriptable objects. So here's my scene settings, and at the top where it says scene configuration, before active sound clip, I'm going to do public scene and then the scene in lowercase. And it's going to look like this. I'm going to save it. Now, I made 3 instances. Do I have to remake those instances? No, is the answer. This is how powerful scriptable objects are. It actually recompiles them all. And if I go into scene settings now, and if I look at start, I have an extra pull down. If I go to main, let's pull main down so it says main. Let's pull end down so it says end. Yeah?
Can you go back to the scenes.cs?
Sure. Well, scenes.cs. This one?
Yeah.
Scene. I called it scene.
That.
Start, main, and end. All this is just, again, these are just an enumeration with start, main, and end. Now, okay, I have to be honest. There's going to be some maintenance here, right? Because if you're going to add in 50 more scenes, this enumeration would have to grow, right? But however, it's less work. It's way less work. And you have a pull down, right? You can say, well, this one applies to this scene, right? And so you can apply different things here. And again, this is one idea of how to make it work. I like little enumerations because they organize our work. They make the user, imagine now you're a C# programmer, or you're the main lead programmer, and you have a level designer. They don't know how to program so good. You give them an enumeration. They can't screw it up. They have a pull down, right? They pull it down, they add it to the scene, they configure it, we're good to go, right? Nice and easy. You can control what they can do through scriptable objects. All right, let's go back. So the scriptable object updated. Even though I never added this in before, it added it in by itself, and I've configured it to which scene is which. So this is the beginning of what we want to do. So our scene configuration is, okay, what scene is it? The start scene. What is the active sound clip? None. Or I can make other ones, and there can be other scene configuration things here too. Great. Now let's go back to the second part. How am I going to put this together in here without doing switching? Switching is bad because then imagine what I'd have to do here. Here's the bad way of doing it. Okay, cool. I want to detect which scene it is, scene settings, and then score label enabled is equal to whatever the active scene is, dot enabled. Live label enabled is equal to blah, 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 dot enabled. And let's do it again, and again, and 4 more times, 5 more times, 50 more times in a switch case. What? Why would we do that? That defeats the purpose of having a scriptable object in the first place. So here's what we need. Things we require to make this happen. 1, we need a list of all of our scriptable objects attached to our game controller somehow. All right? And also we need one scriptable object which is going to point to the active one, the one that's active. All right? Which we're going to assign. So going up here, under our game settings, we're going to put another header which we're going to call scene settings. This is inside of our game controller. I'm going to make a public list of type scene settings. And we're going to call it scene settings. Furthermore, I'm going to make a public scene settings object that is the active scene settings, active scene settings. So whatever the active scene is, that's the one that we want to use. In fact, I want to kind of probably reorganize this so that this is first before my list, like this. Okay? Follow me here for a second. How does this look on your game controller? If I do this public, what it does on the game controller, if I go back and I click on game controller, it looks like this. Active scene settings, whatever that is, and then I have this list. I could find each of the objects manually, or I could change the size of this to 3, because all I have is 3, not 33. And I can just drag and drop, which I recommend for now. So again, I want to drag a start, main, end.
Can you go back to the game controller?
Sure. All I did was add a header, that's scene settings, and I got 2. The active scene settings and scene settings as a list of scene settings. Are you with me? So what it looks like is this. I have the scene settings that I pulled in. Now, remember, there's automatic ways of getting this. You can search for your resources and load them in, but sometimes you get these really glitchy things in 2019.2 where you lose your references to your scene settings. I recommend for now we do it this way. Just pull it in. Okay? There are more advanced ways to do this, but for now this is a good way. Okay, so now that we've done this and we've got our active scene settings, great. Here's our job. I want to take a look at the active scene, which is coming from our scene manager. Take a look. Here's our scene manager right here. This is our hint. Scene manager get active scene name. And I want to use a piece of C# code from the link library. See, link is not here. I want to use link. Does anyone not learn link from their programming 2 class? You learned link. Don't say it. L-I-N-Q. Remember? We did link. Link. L-I-N-Q. Alright? What is link? And I'll tell you what we need it in a second. If I go to link C#, and if you look at what it is, it's called language integrated query. Why do we need this? Because it can do something that looks like this. I want to look at the list of objects and say, hey, I'm looking from this list. I want to see where my active scene is equal to whatever the thing is. And I want to return a short list of objects based on the query. Why? I don't want to for loop through every single object, every single scene in a list of 500 scenes or whatever it's going to be to figure out which one it is that I want. I want link to help us. Link is something that's been used to access data. It can be used to access databases, arrays, lists, all kinds of stuff. It's built into C#. There's nothing for you to do. You just have to use it. And the way we do it is this. We have an IEnumerable of a particular type, and we create a query. And then we have is from, we almost like, just like we do databases, from this score in scores, or from this settings in scene settings, where the setting dot scene, settings dot scene is equal to scene manager dot get active scene dot scene somehow, right? We have to formulate that a little bit. Select that setting and return that back, so that's the one we want out of the list of collection. Now there's different ways of doing this, but the reason why I'm doing this is because I'm anticipating that one day this list will not be a list of 3. There will be 50, 100, 200, 500, however many scenes you want in here. And I want to find the one scene that matches the scene that you've selected. Okay? The one scene that you've selected. Because if you don't do it this way, and if you use a switch case, it defeats the purpose, right? So I'm trying to avoid using a switch case. Now there's some stuff we have to do to make this work. Let me talk about the first part of it. So here's the first way of looking at this. And I'm just going to use this as my little playground, okay? Just for a second. Here's the playground, how it looks. I'm going to use the keyword var. Var is not like the JavaScript var. Var is implicitly typed. We're using something where var can detect the type. We know it's an IEnumerable, by the way. But I'm using var for a second. I'm going to call this a query. And I'm going to say my query equals to from settings in scene settings where, right, settings dot, and I want you to think about what this means. Dot what? It's almost like my settings dot scene, right, is equal to, example would be scene dot start. Okay, this is what I want to do. This is kind of what I want to do. And I want to select, not selectable, select that settings. That's what I want. Now here's the problem with this. It says that it doesn't understand what I'm doing. And if you go scroll up, notice that there's a problem here. One thing that we're missing is link. We don't have a connection to link. And if I scroll down to my error and I hover over it, sometimes they'll have a little thing that comes up and says, are you missing this kind of using statement, using systems.link? Do you want to put it in? And the answer is yes, I do. And when I do put that in, automatically it adds in a system.link using statement, which accesses the link namespace and allows me to do a query on my particular scene settings list. So now my query is an IEnumerable type, like a list, but not quite a list. It's not quite a list, right? And what I want to do, this is my playground. I'm not quite done. I'm just testing here. I'm just testing. And I want to say query dot toList. That's what I want to do. toList, and I want to return the first thing that I'm getting. Or you can also say first. I want to get the first or default. First or default returns first, but you can also say the first one in the list. So first. And what this does is it returns the first instance of something that matches. The first match is what it does, right? I want to query the list, convert it to a list, and return the first match of whatever this match is, right? And this thing, whatever this thing, is what I'm going to be using from now on. And this is what I want to have my active scene settings to be equal to. This is what I want, this structure. However, look, I don't want to pick this. That means I have to still do this. If it's start, then do this. If it's main, then this will be main. If it's end, then this will be end. I still got a switch case somehow, because I need to define which one I'm looking for. No. That doesn't make any sense. What I want is I want to parse my enumeration and convert my scene name from a string to an enum. That's what I want to do, and this is the second part. And I want to put that in here. So how do I do that? So I want to take something like this. I want to do, this is how it looks, so follow me here. I know it's complex, but we're going to do this one time, and then you're going to have the pattern. Alright? I know my enum is of type scene. Not unity scene, scene. I want to enum.parse. Enum.parse requires three little values. Okay? The first value is the type of, and then I want to put in scene. And then what I'm converting from. Guess what I'm converting from, guys? This. And not just this, because this, my friends, remember what this is? My enumeration looks like this: start, main, end. But my scenes are start, main, end, up, just camel case or whatever, right? Or upper camel case. So I need to convert this string to upper. This converts whatever my scene name is called here. It convert the active scene that I'm currently in. It converts it to an enumeration of the type that I'm looking for. And this is what I can compare with here at this line, which means, see this whole thing? I'm going to take this whole thing, I'm going to cut it, and I'm going to put it right here. It's long, it's brutal, but it works. This is what you need, this pattern right here. So let me explain this one more time. So there's two parts to it. One, the query. The query looks at the list of scenes, scene settings files that I've passed to it. That's what it does. It returns, it compares the settings that I'm looking at. It's like a for each loop. It goes through each of the settings files, and it compares it with the enumeration that I'm getting. I'm creating an enumeration based on the scene name that is currently loaded. That's what's happening, right? Once I compare, I'm selecting that particular item and returning it and storing it inside query. From there, I'm converting query to a list, and I'm returning the first thing that I find, the first item that matches this list, and saving it into as a reference to active scene settings, which means that active scene settings is going to have a reference to the current scene settings that I've loaded from my game controller. Whew! Right? Should I uncouple it again? I could uncouple it. I can make it in 3 lines for you. Here's where we can do it. Here's how it could look. It could look like this. I could say that my comparable, right, is equal to all of this. Okay, just to break it out for you guys. Here's my comparable, and now my scene is my comparable. Alright? So now there's a problem with this, which I'm going to talk about. But you can see what it's doing, right? It's saying that, it's trying to say that my comparable, which is of type scene, can return type scene, right? I'm actually missing a little bracket here. Here we go. My comparable is saying this. This now is, if I hover over, an enumeration, a scene comparable. That's what it is. It's of type scene, right? But I want to compare it with this part. In fact, I want to do, like, put this almost like in brackets, if you will, right? I want to enum parse the active scene to upper. That's what I want to do. And this really should be an enumeration. This should be of type scene. It can't really figure it out. Let me show you. It should be scene. And if I do this scene, which is my comparable, so we can rename this as scene to compare. And I want to put this scene to compare inside here. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm saying convert my thing, whatever that is, to an enum and compare it here. Now the problem that we have is it says the range variable setting conflicts with the previous declaration of settings, right? Well, there is no previous declaration of settings, right? From settings to whatever. There is no previous declaration of settings. Let's check. This one. Yay. Makes sense? So this is the scene to compare. I'm getting the scene to compare right here. And then here I'm just saying, hey, if my settings, for every setting in settings, scene settings, take a look at the settings scene, the scene in the, that I'm getting from settings. And then if it's equal to the scene to compare with, which is this part right here, then select this settings. Remember what select is. Select is return a reference to this settings that I want. So this is another way to kind of look at it. I'm just trying to put it in one little comparable. Yeah.
We're both, I don't know if anyone else is, we're having the issue where it says enum doesn't exist in current context. Yeah.
It's probably because you've, yeah, you have to go up here.
System.link?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yeah, we did that.
Yeah, it's already there. Using system now isn't there. So.
Using system should be there, right? If
I
you
don't
have
know why it isn't.
you should have using system. If you have using systems not there, like at the top, here's my using statements. I have using system and all these. Are you guys good?
But that's why I asked Phil instead of trying to waste my time. Easy fix.
Good?
Thank you.
So here you can see that this is what I'm trying to do. I'm going to put this up on GitHub in a second. All right? So here's what I want to do. All I can do is if I really want to skip this step, I'm just breaking this over a couple of lines here. Let me reparse this thing for you. Again, enum.parse. What this is doing is it takes a minimum of a couple of different things. One, it says, hey, I want to parse a type that's of type scene. This, by the way, casts it, right? I want to parse this scene. And I want to get the name for the scene that I want to parse, which is part of the enumeration, from my scene manager, get active scene, whatever the name is, to upper. So I'm forcing it so that whatever the scene is, if it's called start with lowercase s, like so, it's going to take this and make it all uppercase. Why do I need it all uppercase? Because my enumeration is all uppercase. So that's what it's doing. It's converting my scene, whatever it is, to uppercase. And then now that I have this enumeration, it's like I'm saying scene dot start, scene dot whatever. This selects my scene. That's what it does.
Do we have to break it up like that, or are you okay with doing the file query?
I'm okay if you put it. You could also do it. So I'm just going to comment this out. You could just do this. You could just say from here to here, right, as an example. And
have that directly in there.
yeah, you can put it right here.
That's what you had before.
But this is okay. This is kind of clear too, right? This is just breaking it down 2 lines. So let me comment this for you to understand. So this selects the current scene, right? And this compares the settings list with the current scene. That's what this does. And this sets the settings, the appropriate settings for the loaded scene. That's what it does. Those 3 lines. If you look at these 3 lines of code, it removes all of this. However, However, we still need one part of this, and I'm just going to comment this out for now, this whole part. It replaces all of this, so I'm going to comment it out. But what we do need in here instead is I need some kind of settings. Still need to do some of this, right? Because remember, we still need to load it from the one way or another. We need to do this once, right? So I need to still kind of take some of these and start doing some of this. Now I want to put it in a little block. Can I just have a little code block like this? Is this allowed? Yes, absolutely is. I can have a little code block that has no name to it or whatever. And what this does, this little code block is a little scope. What lives and dies in that scope. If I declare a variable in here, it lives and dies in the scope, right? So I can do one of these. And I can uncomment this stuff. And I can say that score label, we want to start off with this, just like we do with our scene settings. And again, I'm just going to pull this aside for just 1 second to make it easier for me to see. All right. So we want to go to my scene settings, and these are the things I want to kind of have. So active sound clip. Then just want to see the names. Active sound clip will be active scene settings dot active sound clip. Active scene settings dot active sound clip. Right? I'm just setting it up. I'm just loading them now from the enumeration, right? From the scriptable object, right? Score label enabled. Score label enabled, my friends. I'm going to say that active scene settings dot score label enabled. And you're going to see it all in its glory in a bit. So bear with me while I just do this whole thing. And this is lives label enabled, active scene settings dot lives label enabled, high score label enabled, active scene settings dot high score label enabled. I know they're really long, but I'm trying to make it descriptive. The next one is start label active. We don't have that, so I'm going to put it in. Start label dot set active, and inside there I'm going to put active scene settings dot start label active, active scene settings dot end label active. Okay, and then I've got these two. I've got two more. I've got a start button and a restart button. I got the restart button here, but I just need the start button. Start button dot set active, and I need to put active scene settings dot start button active, and the last one is active scene settings dot restart button active. And now I can put it back. And now you can see it. So those are all the settings that I need to read from. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Are you with me? I'm only going to ever do this once, which saves me all of that repetitive code. And again, remember, I could break this down into one line, but I'm not going to. I'm breaking it down so it's easier for you to read. But this thing here, the reason why I create an area like this is because it's easy for me to do this. Doop. I can hide my little area if I want to. Makes my code folding is really cool because I can kind of look at things, and it also creates a little scope without a region.
What was the ones you had to add after?
Well, I have active sound clip, score label, lives label, high score label, start label, end label, start button, and restart button, just like I have in my start in my scenes.
You copied the block, and then you copied other ones. What was the other ones you had to copy after the block?
Well, just the ones that I was missing. So I'm comparing these ones, John, all these ones, and I'm making sure that there's a one-for-one relationship to all these. Okay, are you with me? Josh, any questions?
Nope, I'm good.
Guys, in this corner table over here?
Figure out which one I'm missing.
I'll leave it up for a second while you guys go through it. So let me explain this a little bit. Now we're still shy of a couple things here, and I'll explain what they are. So first things first. One is I find the scene. I compare the scene. I return the scene. When I have the scene, I load the scene properties from the scriptable object and load them into the scene settings that I need in my game controller. I do this one time. As soon as the game controller loads inside the current context. So when I load a new scene, the scene changes. This game controller is active in the hierarchy. It searches for the scene, returns the active scene settings, and attaches all the scene settings that I've configured from my assets folder into here. That's what it's doing. Make sense? I know it looks long, but actually it's just copy pasting. If you really want it to save lines or make this more readable, you could reduce the size of this variable to something smaller, like active settings, as an example, which might make it easier for you to read a little bit. Unfortunately, one thing it doesn't have is code color in here, so it doesn't show you the different pieces. This is just Visual Studio 2017's editor. Yeah.
I feel like this is a really, really stupid question.
No, it's not.
But so why is it that some of the labels we use .enable equals active scene settings and other ones we have to use a bracket? And I know it's going to be
It's not a dumb thing, because score label enabled, lives label enabled and set active. These things here are canvas items. They're in the UI. This is using the old UI, not the new UI that is up with Unity right now. So it's enabling or disabling stuff in the UI. So labels in the UI need to be enabled or disabled. However, some of them, start label, end label, start button, and restart button, are objects, and those have to be set active or inactive. That's the difference. Okay, and again, you can make this different. So one thing we've kind of basically replaced all of this forever. That means if I have 20 scenes, 50 scenes, 100 scenes, I never have to put in stuff in here. The only thing I need to update now is my scene enumeration. Level 1, Level 2, Level 3, Level 4, Level 5. I need to add them. I need to actually create my scenes. That has to happen. Each of my new scenes. Let's say, for example, I had 50 more scenes. I'd have to create all them. That has to happen, right? I have to create the scene settings. That has to happen. But I never have to update this again. This scene management stuff, which is bad code, never again, right? However, there are a few things that are missing that we need to correct here, okay? And I have to point them out. One, I didn't take care of this, all right? This high score label has to be put back somewhere. And in fact, I'm just going to put it like this. The lives label, the score label, and the high score label right now have to be put back. So I'm just going to take this. I'm going to go back over here, and at the end, I'm going to put this in. Okay? And I'm also going to put in lives label and score label. And I will explain this in a second for you so you understand. Lives label dot text is equal to, again, remember this, and actually I can pull them from here. This, right? Because there's going to be some things I want to do, right? I don't want to load from this. I want to load from my scoreboard, right? I want to do this. I want to load from my scoreboard, and I want to do the same thing from my score. So it's got to be scoreboard.score. So this is why I have to do it. So why do I have to do this? Because when I load a new scene, this stuff doesn't exist. Also, we ran into this thing from a midterm test perspective. In our midterm tests, remember, we had this dreaded 2 lines. These 2 lines basically always set our lives and our score to 5 and 0. This is no good. What if I have level 2, level 3, level 4? It's going to reset to 5 and 0. So I only want this to happen when the current scene, which is this part, when the current scene is equal to main or start. But I could get it from the active scene settings. If, right, my active scene settings dot scene is equal to scene scene dot start, and that's the only time I want to do it, then do this. Otherwise, never do that again. I don't want to set up my lives and my score again. So I definitely want to do this. So again, it's a bit of meatier, but there's a reason for it. And I've removed it from over here. By the way, I'm just going to take all of this out, these commented pieces of code, just so we can see our real code a little better as we move forward. It's a bit of a code chunk, if you will. It looks like this. Does this make sense? One more thing. I know I keep saying that, but there is more.
Steve Jobs.
Just saying. One more thing. Here's the one more thing. Here, we're storing our value in the score, but we also want to store our value in the scriptable object called scoreboard. So we want to say something like scoreboard dot score is equal to underscore score. So we're having a local variable as well as storing it in the score. And I'm going to do the same thing for lives. So under lives, I want to say that scoreboard dot lives is equal to lives. And I want to do that, so I want to keep track of lives, and I want to keep track of score in my scoreboard. The other scriptable object that I didn't update yet. Are we good? So again, I updated this one on line 61, around 60, which is inside the setter of lives. And I updated this one around line 85, which is in the setter of score. Now, there's a lot of stuff we did here, okay? And we haven't tested a darn thing, which means we could have major failure happening right here. But that's okay. We have to be confident in what we've done, right? Besides, I did it in the first section and it kind of worked. So, I'm okay. I'm confident that it's going to work again, all right? Let's run this craziness and see what happens. So one thing is I want to go back to Unity and I want to test my game object. I want to see that if my game controller kind of took hold of everything. I want, again, just to be sure, I want to go to my overrides and I want to apply all. And now this is the test. If I press play, then things aren't going to break. Yay! So somehow it detected the main scene, because if it didn't, I wouldn't have my mail pilot label or my start button there. It did it automatically. I don't have a switch case, right? If I click start, right, I'm dead. So that's wrong. So what happened? If I restart, I have 4 lives. If I restart, I have -1 lives. What?
This is 4. Remember
what
we had
the?
an issue before?
But why am I dying with 1 hit? Well,
No,
let's take a look
4.
at, no, let's take a look at this. Let's go back to my game settings and look at my scoreboard, and I do have -1.
You do?
Hmm?
Okay, well.
How is that
I
possible? Wait, but how is that possible, right? How is that possible? So what I want is, what should be happening is when I start my game, my lives become 5 and my score becomes 0. Okay, so then, question, is this working? Scene start. The only time this happens is when my active scene settings.scene is equal to scene start. Otherwise, I start at 0. So is this faulty? Active scene settings dot scene, if it's equal to scene dot start. Is this possible? First of all, what is my active settings dot scene? Let's print that out. So if I go to debug, or let's just use print, and I go active scene settings dot scene, and I want to print that out. When I go here, And if I run this thing, what do I get? Start. That's wrong, guys. It shouldn't be start. It should be main. Right? I don't care about my score when it's start. I kind of care about my score when it's main. That's when I want to restart it. That's a problem. That's first thing. First problem.
So what line was that again?
That's on line 131, approximately. Let's see if that fixed it. So I want to run, and I want to click start, and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We're good. So that was the fix. It was a bit of a bug. Notice that this went back down to 0 because this keeps track of stuff. Look at this, start, main, and end. It actually told me the whole progression of my scenes because I did this. This is a good check for you guys to go through, right? I don't need this anymore. I can get rid of it. I fixed my problem. My little bug is gone. And now let's play the game. So let's go over what we did in a second. So again, I start. I kind of move away. My high score is what it is. I move here. I kind of collect the points. I'm dying in this crazy game. Whoa. And then I have 300 points, 2,000 high score. That's what it's showing in my scriptable object. However, if I stop it, it still keeps my score. But when I restart it again, right? And if I click start, my score goes down to 0, which is what it should do, right? Make sense? It's working perfecto, right? And it's working so good that I'm confident that if you were to add 10 scenes, 100 scenes, 1,000 scenes, it doesn't matter. As long as you follow this procedure that we went through, you're going to be fine. So this is the end of your lab 2. If you've got everything here that I've kind of coded to you guys, I know this is a bit of a block. But what this does, this whole section here, right? Let me comment it a little bit. This one checks if the main scene is active, right? And sets up initial lives and score. That's what this does. This part, right, actually applies all the scene settings. So this applies all scene settings from the scriptable object. That's what it does. Okay? This part right here, I'm just going to separate it. This assigns values or text values to labels. And we have to do this because we need to read every level. We have to read the values from the labels now in this new context, right? And again, this is from the scoreboard scriptable object. And this is from the scene settings. Okay, scriptable object. And that's what this thing does. And that's it. Now here's, if you want to take it further. Okay, this is not part of the lab. We have this, clouds. You know, yes, I instantiate islands. And we also have this. I recommend, by the way, let's get rid of this right now as part of our thing. We don't need update. Remember, whenever we have any kind of life cycle functions, empty starts and updates, it reduces performance in your game. Please take those out if they're unused. Do not leave them in because you're afraid. In fact, it's better to remove them. All start and updates must be removed. This is a rule that I'm giving you for best coding practices in Unity if they're not being used in your game objects. Get rid of them. Right? Why? Because they're being called every frame. Every single game object that has a script attached to it that has an empty start and update scene, it's going to be pulled. Right? Please don't let that happen. And in fact, start is worse than update. Right? So please get rid of them if they're not being used. Alright, I think this is good. I'm pretty happy with the results. And you can see that here's something we can update. So again, if I was going to take it further, here's where I could take it further. My scene configuration, right, where I have clouds and islands and all this kind of stuff, I've put it inside my game controller script, but really I could attach this to a scriptable object. right? That's separate. I could, right? So every scene has its own scriptable object if I want to, okay? But I'm not going to do that. And same thing with audio sources and a bunch of stuff. But the great thing about this is it gives us great flexibility when it comes to our scene configuration, our game configuration in general. All right? Questions around scriptable objects?
Just what you were saying with the cloud and island there. I get why you're not doing it now, but would you say that once you know how to do it, it's better practice to use those as scriptable objects?
Here's where, there's two schools of thought on this one. And I want you to think about this. We haven't really talked about design patterns all that much. Right now what I'm doing is I'm instantiating 3 clouds ahead of time, and I'm managing it inside of a pool of clouds. I'm instantiating one island, and I'm just resetting and revamping the island. Next week, what I want to do is I want to create a bullet pool. I want to create an enemy. And I want to have my bullets recycle. Right? Not only further, let's take it one step further than that. I want to create an explosion pool. I want my explosions to recycle. Let's take it one further than that. I want to have different kinds of bullets. Bullets that go straight up, bullets that go to the side, bullets that go, diagonal, bullets that have different kinds of paths. I want to have all kinds of bullets. I want to have a bullet factory. Right? And this is where scriptable objects, the factory design pattern, and singletons all come into play, right? It's advanced scripting, but it goes along with what you should be learning now, coming up in your programming 3, which if I'm not wrong, is coming up next semester. Yeah, isn't it?
Yeah.
You should be learning things more about generics. You should be learning about some design patterns, especially singleton, factory design pattern, and a bunch of other ones. Okay? And what this allows us to do is create spawnable objects that are variable. I can design what the factory stamps out. For example, if I had an enemy factory, I can say, I want this enemy, but I want each of the enemies to be colored a different color, have a different shape, have a different speed, have different armor. Scriptable objects. These are all settings in those things, right? I can have my enemy will have more hit points, it can do more damage, it can be a little bit smarter, it can go a little faster, it can turn on a dime. Yeah.
So would you say you would ever only want to have it within your game controller if it's a very simple object?
If it's something that's simple, then simple settings are here. Also, one thing we haven't really checked are things like speeds. Like, for example, in my ocean controller, right, in my top ocean and bottom ocean, what we have is vertical speed, right? And we have reset positions. But what I could have for some of these things is a range of values. And what you could do is use the range thing instead of here. So what I have, let's go to my ocean controller for a second. I'm going to have to ask these people to leave in a second because they're causing a problem. So notice that I have vertical speed and I have reset position. What I could do in any editor is something we haven't talked about, which is just put in a little bracket and go range. And I want to have a range, from to min float, max float. So I want to have a range from, let's say my reset position could be like 1.0 F to, 10.0 F. And I want to set it up to 4.8 in the beginning. If I do this and go back to my ocean controller, it becomes a dial. Right? Right? You put this kind of range in your scriptable object, guys, and now I have a setting that your level designer can use to move things around. Right? And this is what we want to start doing with our things. We're going to the next level when it comes to design, right? It's not just a matter of doing basic values, but also a range of values that I can apply to see where this thing resets. I can change a lot of this stuff automatically on the fly. Now, this doesn't make sense for the ocean, but I want you to keep in mind that you can do this range thing at any time.
The idea there to restrict.
No, not just to restrict, but to give you range. Like, for example, let's say I want to check a range of values as opposed to type in a value, right? I can do that. I can use an enumeration to only set certain values, right? With a enum, I can do that. So I can do pull downs, I can do ranges of values, I can do all kinds of stuff. And I can use scriptable objects to give me some extra, all these extra configuration settings in another area as well. So lots of real cool power. Let's stop for now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop recording. This is the end of Scriptable Objects. For now, what I want you guys to do, the people that are in the class and that are outside of class, is please submit your Lab 2. Lab 2 is over 5%. If you submit right now with everything that I've given you, it'll be enough where you can get 5%. So I'm going to stop recording now, save this on GitHub, put it up. Worst case scenario, please look at my files on GitHub if yours doesn't work exactly like mine does.
Make sure you got your headers.
Okay?
So the comments.
So let's just comment. I'm just gonna close this up. Close this up. Save everything. And then I'm gonna go back into here and go git add dot git commit minus m, and I'm gonna say added or completed. I'll say scriptable object pattern for scene settings. It's pretty long. May not be all visible. Git push. So that you'll have everything you need for your Lab 2. I'm going to stop recording now. We'll come back and we'll do something else.